Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ravinia Festival. Please locate the exit nearest your seat. The closest exit may be behind you. Please note that the taking of photographs, including the use of camera phones and the use of audio or video equipment, is strictly prohibited. As a courtesy to the artist and your fellow patrons, please ensure that all mobile phones, pagers, and any item that rings, buzzes, or flashes and has an on-off switch have been silenced. We appreciate your consideration. Thank you for making it a great day at Ravinia.
Welcome to all of you to the first event that we have this summer. It's a pleasure to see you here. And it is a great pleasure for me to introduce Robert Levin, who was here before I was in 1989, he tells me, for the first time. It was the infancy of the Steans Institute. And we're delighted to have him back here. And I look forward to hearing a fascinating afternoon. The man knows more than anybody I have ever encountered, and it's really a pleasure. So, without further ado, let's welcome the players and Robert Levin.
Very good. I'm going to go out into the audience and join you so that I can get a better perspective with a little bit of distance. And we're going to be hearing the first movement of the Dvořák A Major Piano Quartet, one of the most beloved pieces in the entire literature, and one that I'm sure most of you love and will recognize and will savor. Super. What an elevated place to start. You're basically all the way there. It seems to me that one of the ways that we can bring special meaning to a piece which is as familiar and as beloved as this is to enhance all of the details that tend to tell the story in a more vivid and more flexible way. And that means in particular that when a particular motive, a certain rhythm is repeated over and over again, to lean into the one which is the most telling rather than to give the same amount of energy each time. So this happens a great deal in Dvořák's writing. He likes to emphasize certain kinds of cellular repetition. And those things can easily become a little bit mechanical and a little bit lacking in expression. So this is something that I'd like to work on with you a little bit. You know, if you, as we now can, you can go on YouTube, you can listen to past recordings of things. They're more accessible now than they've been in decades, and it's a great, great advantage. And I think one of the things that would probably strike someone listening to this marvelous performance, and one that was, say, from the 1920s, is how little you slide. You know? Basically, everything is very hygienic. It's disinfected. It's very, very well in tune, and it's wonderfully played. I mean, there's no reproach that I have to make. But, you know, I mean, listen to Heifetz. Listen to Szigeti. You know? Listen to Oistrakh, and so on. You go back a little ways, and there's so many places where if you have a larger skip, playing with a little bit of portamento is something, especially in Bohemian music, where sentiment is so close to the surface. So I want to encourage you to take some risks like that. Of course, we pianists, we can't do that, and so we're jealous of the four of you, and you should make us even more jealous still. Now, before we embark on the journey, I want to talk to you about something that interests me, concerns me, and about which I don't have an answer. I think it's very, very important for anyone who teaches not to be afraid of admitting that there are certain kinds of problems whose answers are elusive. And the discussion that I'd like to open here has to do with the fact that the right hand of the piano has quarter note triplets at the beginning of this piece, and not too far into the future, those quarter note triplets will be played by the lower three strings. I'm talking about bar 61. You see? All that's going on, and at the same time we have the rhythm of the dotted quarter and the eighth. So, Sayaka, if I look at what you're playing, look what you have. The second bar of your melody, you have a dotted quarter and an eighth. Yeah? So the note that flows is rather late and quick. Then something very peculiar happens. In the fourth bar of your solo, you have a quarter note and a quarter rest, which produces a very long upbeat. Da-dum. And then suddenly, the next time it's repeated, it's an eighth note. Da-ding, da-dum, da-da-dee-dee-dum, bum. You see? Now, if you were playing this in such a way that those things were the product of rubato, that is, very free playing in which some notes are a little early, some notes are a little bit late, which is the way good jazz singers, you know, that's what Ella Fitzgerald did, that's what Billie Holiday did. For heaven's sakes, it's what John Lennon did too with the Beatles. They never play or sing with the beat. And so if the quarter note that you were to play in your fourth bar sounded like you were deliberately playing it early, then that might be okay and you could play exactly what's on the page. But I'm not sure that Dvořák wasn't assuming that you would do all these things as triplets, which then leads me to Sam and your left hand. You see? I mean, the question, it's not about whether you like it or you don't like it. It's trying to guess what people had in mind. Is it really? Or is it? And the reason that this question has to be asked is because this is a tradition of notation that starts in the 1700s and continues into the 20th century. You find it even in the music of Arnold Schoenberg. So in Schubert, it's all the time that there's a dotted rhythm, bum, pa-tum, together with da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. you see? And as I've mentioned to some of you, when Czerny discusses Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, which is a piece that has triplets in it, as every single person in this room very well knows, so on, Czerny says, don't do this. He wants you to go, and every one of you in the room will say, but that's the way everybody plays it. So my question to you is, if everybody does that, why is Czerny telling you not to do the other way? There's only one reason he can be telling you that, because he is convinced that if he doesn't tell you that, you're going to do it wrong. That means he assumes that somebody's seeing this dotted rhythm, dum-da-dum, whether it happens to be played by Sam's left hand or Sayaka in hers, or wherever else it comes up, in the context, and only in the context where triplets are happening. If there are no triplets, this is a dead letter. But if that is the case, if Czerny is saying that, it's because he's warning us, because he knows that everybody alive then is going to do it wrong unless he tells them how to do it right. So these are things that interest me, because I like to try to figure out how people thought and the assumptions that they made. So again, I come back, Sayaka, to you and say, this doesn't mean that you have to play everything absolutely as a triplet, although, I mean, it's perfectly fine to imagine. Sort of turns into a barcarolle, you know? But that doesn't mean it's wrong. So this comes up in another way, in another context, and this is at bar 43. And it will show up in the strings at a later moment, when Sam at the piano is supposed to play the following. Now, how come the first time it's this, and now it's... Well, we know that there's another tradition, which is that people didn't write dotted rests. They only wrote regular rests. So it might very well be that at this point in the piece, and not. Think about it. If you do what is really on the page, you're saying that the first note is more important than where the phrase is going, right? Da-dee-dum, da-dee, ba-da-dum, da-dee-dum, da-dee. The other way, dee-dee-dum, da-dee-dum, da-dee-da-da-dee-dum. So you see, this stuff is really complicated. Now, do you notice that I'm not telling you how to do anything? You see, this is very important. My attitude in working with wonderful musicians like you is to ask questions, to put subjects out there for consideration, and for you to make decisions. That's what needs to be done. I don't know the answer to this question, but I'm more than a little bit suspicious that you cannot just assume that just because you play the rhythm that's on the page, that's right. Because if you did that, then you would play the Courant from the Bach first partita this way, which is extremely difficult to do. And he obviously wanted. And you find Mozart doing this, and you find Beethoven doing it, and as I said, especially Schubert. So I'm going to table the discussion about this because, you know, it's a mountain out of a molehill. But in those few bars where it comes about, the idea is what allows the music to be as natural as possible? That's the question. What allows the character of Dvořák's utterance to seem the most spontaneous, as opposed to making very, very clear audible differences that don't seem capable of being expressive? The difference between da-da-dum, da-da-dum is really not terribly important. But you see, to come back to Sayaka, because I said it in your solo, if you go dee-dee-dim, da-dee-dum, then it doesn't sound like Dvořák told you to do it differently. It sounds like you got inspired. You see? And you got eager, and you came in a little early, which is wonderful. It's also a little cowardly because it allows you to sideswipe the question, but that's okay. All right? Now, it's time for me to stop talking, for you to start playing. Let's work together. You don't have to change anything. You can, but you don't have to. Good, okay. Now we can talk about something different. So, Sayaka, finally. Sayaka, in your solo, you have a hairpin up and down several times. A friend of mine, a Korean student of mine, did extensive research on this, and the evidence is overwhelming, especially by this time, late in the 19th century and early in the 20th century, that these hairpins that go up and down are not just getting louder and softer, but are rubato. And that you should stretch them. And I want to point out that to some extent you're already doing it because you're musical, and your musical impulse is showing you to stretch it a little bit. And I'm telling you that you're right to do that.
Okay.
All right? You see? But you can listen to Rachmaninoff in his recordings, and you hear that he does this. You see, the music goes like this, and he takes time. There's a video interview with Arthur Rubinstein, and somebody says, Mr. Rubinstein, do these hairpins up and down mean play rubato? He says, well, everybody knows that. Except in the year of our Lord, 2017, basically nobody knows that. So I'm throwing this out at you, and you'll see. Now, Sayaka, when you get to bar 15, yeah, the last two bars before the entrance of the two violins and the viola, it's sudden death. You know, you come in and you sing this warm-hearted, wonderful, bohemian, rich, sentimental stuff, and the world is just absolutely wonderful. Life is good. You know, it's a nice summer afternoon, and there are not going to be thunderstorms, unlike here. And, you know, you're having a nice little cocktail, a mojito, or who knows, a mint julep, I don't know, whatever it is, and life is good. And then suddenly you play an F natural at 13. And I think, uh-oh. And then in the next bar, Sam plays C naturals, and instead of A major, we're in A minor, and we are in a calamity. So the color that you generate, we think, what did I do wrong? What happened? You know, you cannot exaggerate that change of color. It's absolutely essential. Last time from the beginning. Okay, so now we can talk about other things. The entry of the upper strings, the sense of connection in the octave. So, I-Jung, you're the first person to do it. You know, there's a cry of despair that comes out of that because the three of you just jump on what she does. When she tells you that she's afraid, there's already a 3-alarm fire that starts in the next bar. So that's really very, very, very important. And it seems to me that you can inflect the rhythms here to create greater intensity. So I-Jung, in your second bar, the G natural, dotted quarter, you know, I'm not forgetting what I'm about to tell you, but a little interjection here. One of the greatest magical things about this Central European music, whether it's Schubert or whether it's Dvořák. The central ingredient is lilt, what the Germans call Schwung. And lilt consists of going up to the top of a hill and over it, and your automobile a little bit too quickly, and suddenly your belly comes to your throat and then comes back down again. And the note that makes that possible is often a longer note before a shorter note, in which case if the longer note is a tiny bit too long and the shorter note is a tiny bit too late and fast, dee-dee-yum-da-dum is better than dim-da-dum, which is absolutely in time but doesn't have that lilt. And then, once you do it, and then it's in octaves with Ben, the major astonishment comes in bar 24 when suddenly there's a G major chord and we head to parts unknown. Yeah? So the dim, ba-dum, da-dum. You have to stretch that because if it just goes by, it doesn't matter to you. If it doesn't matter to you, it doesn't matter to the audience. And the calamity is that some person in the audience who loves that moment will be unutterably disappointed because you didn't love it too. And as I'm fond of saying, they will not buy a ticket to your next concert. All right, entrance of the three upper strings. Good. Okay. Now, some of you have been hearing me say this in the last couple of days. Everybody plays every note in the piece, but you only perform some of them. You perform the things that really are emotionally the richest and the most exciting and colorful. So, starting at 25, this dotted rhythm is being played by the upper strings throughout for 4 bars, right? But if we take it apart, some bars are more interesting than others. In the first bar and in the third bar, you play the same harmony for the whole bar. Dum, di-dim, bum. But in the next bar, there are 2 harmonies. Dum, di-dim, ba. So if you go yum, da-dim, ba-dum, 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 it's very, very marked and it's very rhythmic, but it's not very dynamic and it's rather vertical. But if you go yum, di-dim, da-dum, di-dim, ba-dum, di-dim, ba-dum, then you bring out what's happening in the music. You clarify the storytelling. And by making the music more intelligible to the listeners, you tell them secrets about them that they may not have known before. And then they will buy tickets to your next concert. All right. Right there at 25. Now something between Zhanbo and I-Jung starts to happen, which is rather interesting, which is that the viola starts to drive up the chromatic scale. It's much more interesting than they're allowing you to play. You're being very, very gallant and staying in the background, but at the same time you're doing that, I-Jung thinks that she's going to stay on the E, and she holds the E, but the way you drive that chromatic scale upwards has an effect on her, and it causes her to move down from the E to the D to the C natural to the B. So as you head upwards, you pull her downwards. And to hear that dynamic is something that maybe some of you in the audience have never heard before, but you're going to hear it now. 25. Yes, and now all of a sudden it's time for daydreams. You see? Everything is so physical and so urgent. And now it starts to sway, and I don't know which one it's going to be, but in a couple of minutes we're going to hear a gorgeous, voluptuous A major, and we're going to be very happy to be alive. All right, when you get to letter A at 37, yeah? Again, remember, 1 bar in which the harmony doesn't change, and then stuff which happens. And what happens in the second bar, which is in bar 38, is that the last 16th note in Sam's part and then in Ben's part turns out to be the most important note. Di-dim, da-dum, da-dum, da-dum. Because that's where the A sharp comes in on the bottom. Dum, da-dum. Putting your finger on the crisis moment in the texture is what makes the essential parts of the narrative come to pass. So all of this is good. I think you can, by the way, going back to 25, you're not going to have to do it, but just to remind you, you can contrast even more 25 and 27 on the one hand with the dynamics of 26 and 28. You can still do more. Dim, da-dim, da-dum, di-dim, ba-dum. It can be more explicit, but it doesn't have to happen now. Now we can take the same rhythm at 37, but the same thing, go past the middle of the first bar. The C natural is much more interesting than the B sharp, the D sharp, okay? Yeah, but Sam, you're not being sexy enough in the choices that you're giving me. You can't just go. If it doesn't matter to you, it's not going to matter to me. But that's really very suggestive, you know? Yummy, yummy. Lots of cholesterol. All those wonderful saturated fats. Yes, I love it. Okay, 43, please. Good. And from both Sayaka and Ben, we need more bass support here. 53, 55, 57. Yeah? Both of you. You know? We're getting this wonderful, irresistible sound from the tune in the right hand of the piano, but we need that bass support. Can we do there from 53? Upbeat to 53. Yeah, so the piano part is more explicit about what's going on in this section than the first and second violins, who are just playing repeated notes. But you needed to respond more to what's happening in the piano. Yeah, it's not just that, but it's the You see, it wanders and offers a number of alternatives. Which is it going to be? You have You know, at a certain point, it turns the corner and says, you know, the cage is locked and you don't have the key, and I do. So just to hear is a great pity, because Dvořák offers you 3 different flavors of ice cream, and you don't even notice that strawberry isn't like chocolate. Oh, dear, that won't do at all. Letter B, please, 75. And Zhanbo, you know, you have some very interesting things to play here with your broken thirds. Enjoy them a little bit more. Good, you see? And then you get to the end of it, and he doesn't change. Don't make the mistake of accenting the second one if it's the same. Save it for the third one where it changes. You know, everything that's new is interesting. Everything that's the same is unnecessary. 79. Good, good. So the shock of this is just beyond anything that we've had until this point in the piece. So breathe in the four strings at 90 when you jump from the upper note of the G sharp to the lower one. React to it, because just is very pretty, but it's not particularly dramatic. And then, of course, Sayaka has the echo of it. And Sam, if you're very, very brave, you'll play that chord alone rather on the short side, so it sounds breathless. Not is nice. Has no character. Oh, that has character. Yeah? One of the things that's very hard, especially for pianists to do, is to play short notes with silence. They're terrified of silence. They want to play a nice sort of muddy blah, you know? The end of movements, blah. No. I say leave them hungry. Okay, let's go on. It's time for Zhanbo's beautiful melody. Good, good. You see, and the difference between what Zhanbo does, and ends with a statement, and what Ben does, who asks a question whose basic content is, what am I going to do? That's there's a sense of the forlorn in all of this. But, I mean, it's very, very hard to suffer very much in Dvořák because everything is so gorgeous all of the time that you can pretend that your heart is not nearly so melancholy as it is. Let's hear Zhanbo do his tune again. We're going to have to stop in a few minutes. This is awful, but I'm having such a good time. Yeah, you see, I mean, you have to fight the ordinary, Sam, because I'm hearing... I don't hear... I mean, the G sharp or the F sharp, I don't know which one I want. You know, is it going to be the Beef Wellington or is it going to be the Veal Oscar? I don't know. I don't know. I need the chef to give me some advice. But and even already here, you see, there's so many exquisite things in this piece that you could have 18 performances and not, you know, get to the bottom of them. But the thing that's really essential is understanding that it's true, you have to choose. Because if everything is overloaded with feeling, then the audience after a while gets sensory overload and they turn off. So you do have to make choices. So my task here is to outline the number of places that these choices exist and inspire you to make your decisions and build enough flexibility into what you do so that the organism of this quartet is constantly stimulating and reactive, and that because Sayaka does something, Zhanbo does something that was never done in any rehearsal, and then I-Jung picks up on it and says, oh my God, and Ben says, oh, I get it. And the astonishment of the elasticity, the volatility of what's going on, it sounds like you're making the whole thing up. which in a way you are, you see, because the actor takes the lines and turns them into something that exists at this moment, and only at this moment. If you go to the performance tomorrow, if it's a great actor, it will not be exactly the same. And I know, Anthony, I have to stop, don't I? I'm sorry. We were just at the beginning. Bravo, man. Bravo, bravo. I'm sure you will. I know. It's, of course, completely illusory that you could get through an entire movement, which is 15 minutes, with 20 minutes to talk about it. But I think one of the things that's terribly important for these fabulous young artists, but also for those of you who are here, is to understand that the attitude that you take towards performance is not in itself confined to individual decisions at any particular moment in the story. That once you get a way of thinking, a way of breathing, a way of activating your imagination, of turning straight lines into curves, that can be applied everywhere, and it doesn't require micromanagement by a teacher. The point of a teacher, of a great teacher, is to render him or herself superfluous as quickly as possible. And a person who tells you, play it this way or play it that way, may be giving you the best practical advice in the world. But unless you understand the reason for wanting to do it quickly this way or that way, then you will become the addict who needs to get a fix. And every time you do a performance, someone's going to have to tell you what to do, and it will work very, very well. No. You explain to them the philosophy that underlies the whole thing, and then they are on their own path. That's what I've devoted most of my life to doing. All right, it's time for some Schubert. The last Schubert sonata, and one of the greatest piano sonatas ever written. I'm headed back into the audience. many admirable things, some of which I want to make public so people understand not only that you're doing wonderful things, but that how some of those things differ from what a lot of people do, with which I would disagree, and I agree with you. So, and I don't agree with you just because I want you to be happy or just for the sake of flattery, because that would be a waste of time. Well, but I was speaking a little while ago about having the confidence to make silences expressive. And I feel that at the very end of the piece, you're being too nice to us because you're holding the chords too long. You see? Because you play, you get to hear. And he's written and those silences are so powerful because they show your fragility. They show a soul in need. And the audience feels its heart pounding as it waits to see, is she going to hug me? Is she going to hold my hand and tell me it's okay? I really need her to do that. You know, I'm not sure that she's going to do it. You think she will? You see, I mean, this is such an important part of Schubert's world. And, you know, I talked about lilts in the Dvořák, so I just incorporated here, as the lawyers say, by reference. But I think there are many places where you need to feel a more elastic sense of touch. And in particular, where you see Schubert writing eighth notes and eighth rest. Not? And least of all, I think you're overusing the pedal a lot of the time. And as a result of that, I mean, this whole passage, when I'm hearing, I mean, it's just all applesauce. I mean, it's very, very important. I need that kind of clarity to make the piece as murderous in intensity as it actually is. So remember that our pedal is the string player's vibrato, and like the string player's vibrato, it should not be overly and ubiquitously used. You use it to create a certain kind of resonance, but be careful that it doesn't blur and that it doesn't make a nice sound where you don't want a nice sound. You know, there are times when Schubert gets into a snit, he loses its temper and slams the door, and then comes back and says, I'm sorry, I got a little carried away. You know, I mean, what happens, for instance, in the coda, both the exposition and the recapitulation, you have God damn it! Sorry. Yeah, I got a little carried away there. You see, but if you go, see, you got the pedal down, that's a nice sound. I don't feel threatened by that. That's a register that must not be misused, but it is latently there because Schubert is a composer who has looked terror in the eye the way no other composer before or since has done. Sometimes Ligeti gets pretty close. You know, Mahler tried, but Mahler had 120 people on a stage, and there's just you here. You see? So that's something else. And also, I mean, when you... and you come back, but you see, the sense of the empty stage, the sense of the neediness of the listener, praying that you will come back and console me because I so desperately need you to do that. Now, having said that, we can come right back to the beginning of the piece. And I think the most important thing about starting this piece is that you feel like you are in motion before you play, because at the moment what you do is you find your way to the first sound in the piece, and having made that sound, it's like the Olympic swimmer who pushes the foot against the wall of the pool to get one stroke advantage. You know, so we start, And as soon as you do that, we are earthbound. The sound must be airier, it must be intimate, it must more intimate, and it must be more fragile. And therefore, you have to have such a sense of freedom that you can... And then the sun comes out when you play the long note, and everyone says, oh, it's going to be wonderful after all. But we cannot begin with that kind of a concrete sound. And then the final thing I'll say to you before you begin, you have a choice here. You can play the top melody as if it's the most important. Or you can consider actually playing more with your thumb. Now, in a string quartet, and I could have said this in the Dvořák, but I'll say it right now, when the violins are playing in octaves, it's better to have the second violin a little bit stronger than the first, because this sounds much more unified than this, which sounds like octaves. So the difference... It weaves a tapestry that links the right hand to the left. So this is something you can do immediately. Yes, now, if, you see, we have long notes and we have short notes, but we miserable wretches that play the piano don't have a column of air which is being blown into the oboe, nor do we have a bow which is pulling on the string and perpetuating the sound and keeping it alive. What we have is a hammer and it goes tuck. And then if we keep our fingers on the keys, it's still there, but the sound decays. A long note must not be allowed to differ from a shorter note only because nothing happens. And because nothing happens, you realize that note is still there, therefore it must be long. A singer will never go dee 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 dee. No. Dee 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 dee. So how do we do that? How do we do that with an instrument that has a hammer that goes tuck? It's called arm weight. You see? You play with your fingers. You play with your fingers until you don't. And suddenly that sound does something which is completely improbable. We say, but a piano can't do that. You know, string players will say, you guys can't make a crescendo on one note. You want to bet? I just did. You don't believe it? Listen again. See, if I put the pedal down right away, but if I put the pedal down slowly, so you can do that. Yeah, you see? Now, you solved the first problem because now you have glow. But please, the other half of the story is that when the faster notes come, they are parenthetical and you just breeze past them. They don't need any help from you. They just become granular, bumpy. Okay, now technically you're in good order, but you're not smiling at me in the dotted half note. Now warm up. Ah. Yes, and it does not need to be longer than the actual bar. But you see, you must not be afraid of that trill, because fear will not help you play it better. What will help you play it better, since he's asking you to play it extremely softly, and the danger is that it will suddenly ping and one note will stick out, ruining the entire effect. Do not allow the keys to come all the way up to the top again. Once you start, find out how far down you can hold them before the trill jams. That's the point which piano technicians will tell you is called the let-off. And if you can get close to let-off, see, I'm not even cheating with the pedal. That was pretty good, and I didn't even practice it. See, and on every piano, that let-off is at a different spot. So on the afternoon of your recital, that's one of the things that you're going to check. You know, to make sure you control it, you push it down this much, but not that much. Because here you are, you suddenly, your whole soul opens up and your heart is full of warmth and you feel that the world is so beautiful, and suddenly, what the hell is that? The angel of death just flew over. You know, what are you going to do? Okay, I'm going to start again. I'll try it again. Maybe this time, maybe it'll be okay this time. Okay, dear God, help me. I mean, this is Schubert, for God's sake. You know, the whole world is hanging in the balance here. That trill will come back over and over again, and every time it does, it fills you with the terror of death. And then the sun comes out on the other side, if you're lucky. You know? If you're not lucky, we read about it in the papers the next day. Suddenly a different direction. Now you console me. Yes, and see, think of the elasticity of the G, D. And not just, that's sleepy. That's not the same. Yeah, but that's too, yeah, you can tell. You see, it has to be, it has to have, think trampoline. Yeah, and see, this time instead of having it go this way, it's the other way. No, I mean, that is terrifying. This, of course, is an unimaginable paradise. You know? And when you play that, you have to be very, very careful that your left hand stays entirely tranquil. Keep your fingers flat, keep your wrist loose, keep your elbow loose, so that you can just a murmur that allows your right hand all the room it needs to create the sound and the color that you want. Yeah, it's your wrist is pretty good, but it's a little bit, you know, just rotate it a little more. The idea is, look at your fifth finger. When you play the G flat, your fifth finger should be parallel to the black key. By the time you get up to the here, your thumb should be virtually parallel to the B flat. And your second finger is going to be absolutely flat with the tip of the finger almost on the fallboard. Yeah, you see? Now you've got complete control. It doesn't have to get louder. Yeah, you have to keep on thinking about that low G flat, because otherwise it's not going to speak. You know? Just say, I know. Say to your fifth finger, I know, it's hard. It's hard. Yeah, you're going to be fine, you know. Come on, courage, courage. Come on, fifth finger, come on. Good, good. And you know, you think this. It's so exquisite that it hurts a little bit, but that's the kind of hurt I like. You see? So you really have to enjoy this. And when you play here, come back. Do it again because you like it so much. You want another scoop of ice cream. You know, it's absolutely fine. Know when the music continues to travel forward and know when the music circles back and returns to do something else. It's a very, very different feeling. No rush. Yeah, and not. That's what you practice in the practice room. I'm not interested. You know, it's the general direction. And you see, little eddies in the current. That's all. Yeah. Now you're coming along and everything is here. What is that? You can't just go. That is an absolutely fateful thing. And it deepens and deepens and deepens. And you think, well, I don't know, the desert island seemed pretty good, but this B-flat major is getting better and better. You know, maybe I'll stick with home. Yes, raise your second finger enough that you get a good repetition. Right, and I know in a way the forte is at the end of the bar, but actually where you're going is the next bar, or maybe the bar after that, you know? You know, don't get caught in the short-term goal. Keep going and play for the long haul. Yeah, and it's unimportant. It's just there to keep things vibrating. Okay, good. And then then suddenly you see death, right? Because you see, it keeps on happening in this piece. These monstrous, frightening things, these apparitions that keep on coming and troubling our sleep. Every time he gives us warmth and consolation, something else happens. This person is really in big trouble, you know? And the narrative is constantly going back and forth as the wheel of life turns between that which is rational and understandable and things which cannot be understood at all, which are supernatural. Now, you do something which is wonderful. I must say, this is the first time in ages I've heard someone play the F-sharp section without playing it like this. Almost everybody does that, and you're one of the very few people that I've ever heard play who knows that actually the melody is here. Because, you see, it's amazing, it's right there, it's there to be seen, and you know it, but a lot of people don't. So, but your score is 50, because the other half of it is what happens when you get to here. I have to hear that, and then because later on see, sooner or later the composer is going to reveal the secret, but you want to be in on it from the get-go. You see, those things are really very important. But you had it right. By the way, since I'm an honorary member of the text police, I have to police you and tell you to be very, very careful about the fact that the B flat is three times.
Oh.
Or, A, B, B, A, but, we're friends, so it's okay. All right, so. Yeah, now I need a little bit help in the exquisite harmonic subtlety of this passage, because you have, you're going along here. That would be a wonderful place to go, so let's hope we can get there. But then you don't take us there, and then you do, except you don't. And you're on the razor's edge, and we need to hear the coloration, the darker color and the brighter color. Yeah, you see, but it's all. And don't be afraid of a little bit of time, just to make it a little more palpable to the audience. Yeah, that's painful. I mean, I understand something that goes, but I don't understand something that does this. Do you know a sonata by Beethoven that goes? You see? I mean, that's not legal in the state of Tennessee. So when you play, arthritis everywhere. And back again. Not too much pedal. Home again. No. Yeah. You see, the phenomenology of the normal and the crazy, that has to be communicated with sound. And all the way through this piece, this is going to be the major thing in your quiver. And it doesn't really matter whether we're talking about this movement or whether, for instance, we happen to be talking about there's never been anything like that. There's no defense against something like that. What's a person to do? You think. You'll never sleep another night after that. He shows you things that he believes you need to know. He knows that they are going to break you so badly that you'll never be able to put all the pieces together. But at least it's metaphorical. God forbid it should happen to you in real life. These people martyr themselves It's not just Christ who died so that we could live. Schubert did too. He was almost as young as Christ, 31 years old. Mozart, 35. Pergolesi, 26. I mean, this is an ambassador from the other world. You know, if you don't listen to this message, it's your own fault. So you have to tell them. They need to hear this from you. And on the night that you play, there's no one else who's going to do it. Nobody. The future of Schubert rests in your hands. You must not fail him. All right, Audrey. Thank you. Bravo. I have to thank the people here at the Steans Institute who absolutely spoil me to death by choosing my favorite pieces for this class. They didn't ask me, they just did it, but they hit bullseyes 3 times in a row. Okay. So there's a fundamental question, I think, that has to be addressed in beginning this movement. And that is whether the unison tune in the strings is of essentially lyrical character or if it's dramatic in character. And at the moment, you're choosing the lyrical route. But I would caution that this tune occurs in two guises, one of them at the beginning of the piece and at the return, in which it's fortissimo, and then at the codas, in which it's forte. So I think there's room for both viewpoints. But what happens in this piece is something really quite spectacular, which is that the piano starts from a distance, like the cloud of dust in the Western, miles and miles away that you see in CinemaScope. But the crescendo that it makes is enormously violent and quick, like that. And suddenly, before the audience can even adjust to the beginning of the piece, there's a hurricane. And it seems to me that this requires a searing intensity. And the intensity is defined, as always in Fauré, by his extraordinarily sophisticated and invidious sense of harmonies. And harmonies, some of which are denatured and crazy. There is a whole attitude in this piece of uncanny sounds that we've never heard before and maybe we'll never hear again. So the whole idea... This is just, it's nuts, The wind is howling, the roof is blowing in, everything is absolutely all hands on deck, And in seconds since the piece began. This is not normal, you see? I mean, he does happen to like to begin his chamber music pieces in unisons. And that works really very well. But that is a piece which I think is noble and grand. And this is something else. He's trying to get a step above what he's done before. And I think he does. He succeeds. The G minor, when I was a kid, of course, the C minor was my glory, and I thought the G minor piece was a little weird. But, you get older, it's like single malt scotch. When you're young, you think Levoris is just as cheap. But here, the sense of urgency of the piece is, I think, very, very important. So being aware that when you play the B naturals, that's not a place, I think, to be nice and sweet and gentle, but it's a place to really dig into the string and make the sound seem as crazy listening as it sounds when you see it on the page. And then it comes out, and then it's Ying's turn, and she gets to do it. So this is something. Now, the other thing was I was speaking in terms of Dvořák and Schubert about lilt. But there's lilt in this piece, too. There are two rhythmic cells that I think can be played a little bit more flexibly. One of them is the dotted eighth and the 16th. Ti-ya-dum, ti-ya-dum. Max, you get to play that right there at 43. And the other one is the eighth and the 2/16. Ti-ya-da-dum, not-dim, patatam, ti-ya-da-dum. Little somersault. You see, if you think about that, I think it will help make the piece a little bit more flexible. But also, I mean, we're in France now, And in France, they like fancy sauces and good wines and things like that, My next stop after this, my second stop is I'm going to make some of you jealous. I'm going to the vineyard at Romanée-Conti. And I'm making a recording there. And the days are going to be hard work, but oh, those evenings. When they go to the wine cellar and they bring, All right. Let us, as they say, get this show on the road. But I think, again, Ying, you start pianissimo possibile and just roar onto the stage. And then the strings, even though they're playing in unison so they have power, they have to hang on for their dear life. Now, you see, we have to make some distinctions here. The fact that you have a half note in the second bar, that's important. Da-dim-da, dee-da-dim-bang, dee-da-da-dam. You come out the other way. Dee-da-dee-da-da-dee-dim. You know, there's such wildness going on here. So make interruptions sound like corrections of intentions, you know? Maybe a few minutes earlier and the Titanic wouldn't have hit the iceberg. Huh? Now more! 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 Good. Okay. Now the other secret, Ying, is you're going to make this. I'm sorry, you know, I get carried away. It's just the way I am. Yeah. The trick is that you're going to make that piano crescendo, and it will be murderous. But as soon as the strings come in, by the time you get to the second bar, you will drop and get out of the way, and nobody will hear it. You know, they won't hear it as a drop in dynamic because the strings then take over the cutting edge. But otherwise, you're in competition with them, and you make more noise rather than supporting. And by the way, the danger is in your right hand, not in your left, because your left hand is in a register that's an octave and a half away from the cello. So Sayaka doesn't have to worry about you, you see? But you have to worry about tenor, and you have to worry about max. So your right hand just, you know, swirl it under. But more, don't give up the melodic aspect of it, but you need more accentuation and more phenomenology of the crazy. Yeah? Last time from the beginning. Good, okay. So here's the irony, Ying. The irony here is that you've got the tune, but you still have to worry about being too loud because of the register that the violin and the viola are in. You see? I mean, I'd like to console string players that just because I'm a pianist doesn't mean that I don't care about balance. You know? I mean, it's the whole thing. You don't want people to attack you in that way. So your Alberti bass in the left hand can be less. And here, your right hand can be lyrical in the way that the strings were before I told them there was another alternative. You see? You no longer have to do that because you're not fortissimo, as they were. All right? That's the important thing. Can we go just from 11? You have bar numbers, right? Yeah. Good. Okay, so Ying, your bass line is very important to be a foil to what tenor is doing, right? Do, re, mi, la, sol, sol. And time your arpeggio. Notice the arpeggio wave does not connect the left staff with the right staff. So it means that you arpeggiate both of them simultaneously, yes, and therefore you should be able to meet him when he plays his C. You should have reached the top of your arpeggio. It shouldn't come afterwards. It doesn't need to. You see? But not that it rushes. You just start the arpeggio a little bit sooner. That's why there's the grace note in the left hand. Yeah? Tanner, you're upbeat to your solo? That's still very, very late. Yeah? It's not disagreeable. You know, a little bit of rubato is all right, but I want you to experience it the other way, and then I let you just decide, because I'm not a person who tells people what to do. I open up windows, I don't slam doors. Now, having said that, Ying, I want to explain to you why I advocate that. Because if, in fact, the top of your arpeggio coincides with the beginning of Tanner's gorgeous C, he has the stage all to himself to make that C the most beautiful sound anyone has ever heard. But if you're still arpeggiating, you're in competition with him. He goes, and then I have to decide which I think is more important. And even though I'm a pianist, I'm voting for the viola. Okay? So these are things. Remember, in a piece of chamber music, everybody plays the whole piece the whole time. You don't just play your part as well as you can and assume that everyone else is just as good, so it'll be fine. It's not the way it works. You breathe, you mind everybody's business, including, of course, your own. All right? Last time. Yeah, good. And here's a piece of advice that I will give all of you, but in particular Ying, because you're the one who's playing. If you listen to what you're doing, you're going... And stopping like that is waiting for the traffic light to turn green. You see? It's not that you can't take time, but the time has to be proportional so that you play... But not. You know, it's as if maybe you had a memory lapse. But how can you be having a memory lapse when the music is right on the music stand in front of you? Okay? So just think about that. And be careful not to overpedal in this passage because it's complicated. Yeah? Right on the next bar, which is 32. All right. See, now I mean, this is written in the country that invented perfume, and one hears it because Max, you play. You almost went there, but you don't. And the second time. You know, they say, there once was a woman from Kent who said that she knew what it meant when men asked her to dine on caviar and wine. She knew how she knew, but she went. You start to hear music like this and you think, I'm in over my head. You know, I'm at this fancy restaurant and he's paying, and mommy told me to avoid this. She told me I should not do this. You know? So all of this innuendo, these elusive harmonies, constant shifting of the plates. That's what I mean about the lilt in the sound. There has to be an attitude to everything you do. 32. Good, good, good. And these kinds of inflections are absolutely wonderful, but be careful if you're going to take time that you don't have a slight bump on the downbeat. You have to sustain over the bar line, you know. Just make sure that the bow is still in contact with the string. Yeah, okay, so Max, you've got to reach for it. Tanner helps you a little bit, but when you get to the end of 44, and suddenly life becomes so easy. Suddenly it becomes unexpectedly, inexpressively sweet. And I get dizzy. I think, I've never experienced anything like this. Who is this guy anyway? Who is this Fauré guy? How does he know so much? You know? How does he know? It just slays me. And then there you are on an E flat dominant 7th chord for a bar, and the next bar you're in D major. I mean, I don't know. My wife is maybe somewhere over Chicago right now. She's on her way between Boston and Narita as I speak, you know? But it's going to take her 14 hours. I can't do it in 3 minutes, but Fauré can do it in 3 minutes. He can do it in 8 seconds. He takes you from one end of the world to the other, and that's what you have to do. You have to change your sonority from a flat sonority to a sharp sonority. Yeah? All right. How about, it's all right, you can start right there. Give them the bar number. So Tanner, that belongs entirely to you, from no later than 49 all the way to the end. That's you. Okay. It's not just da-dee-da-dum, it's absolutely yours. Tell the rest of them that they're not even in the game. Take their cards and go home. It's 49. Yeah, see, and there too, see, a little bit of lilt. The end of that bar, 56, the 8th note a tiny bit too long, and the 16th a little bit faster. You know, you hold on to that G major and know it's E flat. Oh my God. Wow. So tasty. Woo. All right, E flat major, everybody. This is 52. Keep tempo. Now. Flow. Yeah, you know, you don't have to wait a half hour for the train. You know? How about 59? Yeah, and see, so there too, I mean, Tanner, you have a certain amount of freedom in this 8th and 2/16 rhythm, but certainly at the end of 89, when the piece is about to drop back 4 bars, you need to lead us back. You see? I mean, this is music. I remember the first time I heard this piece. I couldn't fathom it because it you know, according to the rules of harmony that you learn in German textbooks, there is no explanation for what this means. It produces these kinds of sensuous longings that are inexplicable. One is invaded by these inchoate senses of desire, and I don't know where he figured that out because it's not to be found in any book. But it starts to make your nerve endings go all weird, you know? And then the triumph of the transfiguration of the original motive, which is a hurricane at the beginning, and then rich and lyrical and forte, is now pianissimo, floating, and completely transformed, domesticated, and made exquisite. And then he will have to take the road back, you see? So that's important. I think we can skip for a minute because we're running out of time here. Can we go from 99? Yeah, so you must not wait at that point in the entrance of the strings in Ying. You have to react immediately. But it's very important to understand this. You can stretch that a little bit. You know, Sayako, she'll hear you. It'll be perfectly fine. Let's go right on because we only have a couple of minutes. 107. No rush. Pale as death. 3 o'clock in the morning. Shh. Tam tam, bomb. Tam tam. Fight the crescendo, fight it. All right, now, all right. Amazing. Because you get to this point, you see, and there you are in this dominant 7th chord, and you're playing. It's on the tip of your tongue, but you don't see it. Oedipus didn't see it, and he slew his father at the crossroads and married his mother. He didn't know. But you're playing ba-dee-da, don't you understand? If you go down that road, you are doomed. That's the end, because it's the beginning. And you don't see it, and you go, and it's too late. God, what a great composer this guy is. You know, there is nobility in this piece the way there was in the first quartet. But there's something more. There's something more insidious, more terrifying, more irresistible. It's like a narcotic, you know? You don't need those controlled substances. All you need is to listen to a piece like this or play it once in a while. You know, it'll cure the opioid epidemic in America. Just tell people to listen to the Fauré Second Quartet, for God's sake. Everything will be solved, and it won't take a single dollar. Yeah? All right, folks, we got to stop here. I'm sorry, but this was great fun. Thank you. Bravi, bravi.